So that's a really good question, and I'll answer in two ways. The first way is what I call fishing efficiency. So what I call fishing efficiency, the first time this realization dawned on me, I was fishing the River Tweed in Scotland many years ago. And I got to the Tweed, to the Gillies hut, 8 o'clock in the morning.
As you do.
As you do, Gilly says, right, welcome to our beat. This is the beat. Here's your whiskey. Oh, this is good, 8 o'clock in the morning. Excellent. That's just the way it is in Scotland. And the Gilly gives us a wee dram and he surveys the pool. He says, right, Simon, you're going to start off with that pile of rocks. You're going to get out of that pile of rocks. And you're going to make a cast across the river. Land as near the far bank as you can. Let it swing round, and when it's on the dangle, you strip it in, make a cast, make a pace. All right, Kevin, what are you going to do? Oh, just sit in my hut. I'm a Gilly, not a guide. So he sits in the hut, and I got in at the rocks, and I would cast, and I swung, and I cast, and I swung. And 4 hours later, I got to the second pile of rocks. Didn't have a grab, because I'm in Scotland, but you know, that's the point. Kevin says, right, Simon, you're at the rocks, come in for lunch. And I was using a Scandi head, like this. I was using a slow-sinking, very slow-sinking Scandi head. Oh, I love casting Scandi, yeah, nice. And then, like I just told you, pull it in. Oh, I love casting Scandi, woo, yeah. So I was fishing my way down. And I got to the second pile of rocks. Kevin said, come in, have a wee dram. And we had lunch, right, Kevin, what now? He said, oh, just do it again. So the only piece of water you've got is the same bit of water. Oh, really? I didn't catch anything. Ah, there might be a fish just ran in. So I thought, right, bugger this casting game. So I stuck on my long belly line, started at the same pile of rocks, got out the same pile of rocks, one cast, one pace, moved down. It took me 3 hours to fish it, because I wasn't doing this between every single cast. And so one reason you go to a long belly line, I call fishing efficiency, because you can make your cast, and then when it's time, you might do 1 or 2 pulls, and then you can make your cast. Well, you can't with a short head, you've got to pull it all the way in. So, the main advantage with those longer belly lines is you can have those long casts. See the black mark here Morsy's put on his line. So, you know, that line's kind of a similar length, but I don't need to pull any in. My line's there. Boom, boom. Boom-bitty boom. So one advantage with long belly is your fishing time is greatly accentuated. That's cool. I like that. But there's 2 things to know about that to temper that nice bit of advice, and one of them is this is a little bit harder, so it's not quite as easy. Where a Scandi, you can pick that up, make an enormous boob in your casting technique, and it'll still go out. So as a teacher, I don't like those short head lines, because people think, oh, I just did a great cast, when technique it was wrong. You do a bad technique with a long belly, and it falls in a horrible mess. It doesn't go very well anyway. So your faults are more accentuated by the longer headlines. The biggest reason to kind of be careful of these long headlines is that if you have a small D-loop, I always like to kind of think of a ratio. I want my D-loop bigger than my anchor. The anchor is that bit of line lying on the water. I want that more than that. If that is more than that, that will move that much easier. So with the small D-loop on a long belly line, my ratio is very wrong. Small against big. If I try a nice easy cast, it doesn't load. I can do it with a bit of power, but I don't want to cast like that. I want to cast efficiently. And so to cast efficiently with these long head lines, I'm going to throw the D-loop much further back, like 10 or 12 or 15 feet back or 20 feet back, which means you have a problem when you're tight to obstructions. So long belly lines, which are my favourite type of lines to cast and fish, are great if you've got some space behind you. I mean, I paused here so you could see where the D-loop landed. This is Morsy's 14-foot rod. That D-loop is another 6 feet beyond that rod. So at minimum I need 20 feet of line to cast this, 20 feet of space, if I want to be efficient. All right, with 20 feet of space behind me, I can throw back a nice D-loop and make a cast, no problem. With a small D-loop behind me, I can't make that same nice cast. I have to hit it. I can still get it out there. So you can still use them in a restricted space, but you work so much harder. So the plus of the long belly lines is the fishing efficiency, the fact you become better casters, you develop a better technique. Those are really the big pluses. And the negatives are you need a lot more space and a much better casting technique. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
That was a good question. Anyone else got a question?
Just back in regards to the balancing point.
Yeah.
Now you spoke about with the reel that you've got, where you would find that balancing point. Setting up a new rod and reel combination, is there a preferred spot that you would be aiming to get that balancing point with your grip?
That's a good, bloody hell. Some good questions here today. I like this. I'm going to come back. Other places don't give me good questions. So, remember that casting forward stroke I talked about, which is this loading move followed by the rotation move. So, I like to call that the ABC. And the ABC, I'm going to do it left-handed to show you. The ABC is quite simply a picture, that's all it is, that you can have in your head or you can draw on a chalkboard or whatever you like. And the ABC are the three positions of a forward stroke. Position A is the start of the forward stroke, the key position. You've done your back codes and all of these things, you've got in the key position, that's A. Position B is the end of the loading move, which should be parallel. We already determined that. So that's position B. And then position C is the end of the rotational move. So A to B, B to C. When you handle a long belly line, it's a bit like on a golf course, trying to make a 55-foot putt. You know, with a tiny little backswing, or a tennis shot with a tiny backswing. You want to go throw a stone or a spear a long way. When you have a long line, you need a much longer casting stroke. With a long belly line, my ABCs are usually going to be my key positions much further back. I'll get to your answer. This is a very long way of getting there. I'm with you. My key position is much further back because I want a long A to B before I go to B to C. With a Scandi, I'm going to be here, have a short A to B. So because I want a long stroke, I'm going to slide my grip further up the rod. I'm going to get my arm further back. And so with the longer belly lines, I want my balance point to be up here somewhere because it's easy for me to hold to get this long stroke. With the short head lines, where I want a shorter stroke, I want my balance here because that gives me the short stroke. So it depends on what I'm going to set my rod up for casting stroke. With long belly lines and long casting strokes, that balance point should be way up here. Then you've got this lovely long loading move before you power. With a Scandi, you don't want that. You don't want long strokes. You're just going to tire yourself out. So you set your balance point up closer. You're going to have these real short strokes as a result. Does that answer that?
It actually answers my second question too.
Oh, good. Right. Excellent. 2 for the price of 1. Anyone else? Any other questions?
You're casting off your non-dominant side, Simon. Do you encourage people to develop the other hand up?
Oh, what great questions. All right. That was an excellent question. I like this one. Best question of the day. If I had my stash of hats, I'd be giving you one. So, the gentleman asked about casting non-dominant hand over backhand. What have we got here? So for me, I'm usually very open-minded about casting and teaching, and just worry about the physics of casting, how a rod loads and how a rod unloads and all that. This is the American way, spey casting, what they call cack-handed. And in Scotland they teach you to cast left-handed when you have to cast on this side of the body. And in reality, in terms of physics of casting, it doesn't really matter which way you hold it. Where it does matter is when you get to the longer head length lines. And if you ever go to the Golden Gate Casting Club in San Francisco and you attend what's called the Spey, which is one of the world championships of Spey casting, if you went there maybe 10 years ago when it was early days, you'd have seen every US and Canadian caster competing, because in that competition you have to make 4 casts 3 times. You do 12 casts, you do 4 casts 3 times. 2 single Speys, 1 right, 1 left, 2 snake rolls, 1 right, 1 left. And in those days, the all Americans were up in here and woo, hack-handed snake rolling, or hack-handed single Spey casting, until they started to watch how much further the Scottish, Norwegian, Japanese casters were casting with their left hand. And the reason, again, boils all the way back down to that casting stroke length, is when you are hack-handed, you cannot get this long backstroke position. Your body is in the way. Change hands, you can get a much longer stroke, much longer acceleration. And so I tend to say it doesn't really matter, but if you see yourself in a place where distance is an objective, whether it's longer casts with the shooting heads or longer belly lines, spend the time to learn with your non-dominant hand so that you don't later on, oh, I've got to change everything and learn with my non-dominant hand. Apart from anything else, more people, as I said at the beginning, actually learn quicker with their non-dominant hand because muscle memory is not there. And the final reason to do it is, boy, is it satisfying. I can't do anything left-handed. I can't write. I can't, whatever else I do with the left hand. I can't throw a stone left-handed. I can't do anything left-handed. But when I cast and make a cast left-handed and it goes out and gets a fish, yes, pretty satisfying. So there's a lot of reasons I would suggest, and I do suggest, that everyone learns with their non-dominant hand, with their non-dominant hand rather than hack-handed style, for those reasons. But that's just me. As I said, when the physics of the cast are applied